Imagine a world where silence is not empty, but full of meaning. A world where words do not chain your mind, where emotions do not rise and fall like waves with every conversation. A world where you can simply be, without the pressure to speak, to explain, to justify. What if I told you that silence is not just the absence of sound, but the presence of something much deeper, something so profound that even the Buddha himself used it as a gateway to enlightenment? In our modern world, noise is everywhere. The sound of notifications, the pressure to reply, the endless chatter in our own minds. We fear silence. We avoid it. We fill every moment with words because we think silence is awkward, unnatural, or even lonely. But the Buddha taught otherwise. He practiced what is known as noble silence, not just refraining from speech, but cultivating a deep, mindful stillness that allows wisdom to arise. It is in this silence that we truly listen, not just to others, but to ourselves. Why did the Buddha remain silent when asked certain questions? Why did he not answer every debate, every argument? His silence was not ignorance, nor was it avoidance. It was wisdom, because some questions have no answers in words, only in direct experience. Noble silence is the space between thoughts, the pause between emotions, the doorway to clarity. When we practice it, we free ourselves from the constant need to react. We observe rather than judge. We listen rather than speak. We become aware rather than distracted. Think of a calm lake. When it is still, it reflects the sky perfectly. But when it is disturbed, all we see are ripples and distortions. Our mind is the same. When filled with words, reactions, and endless thoughts, it becomes cloudy, restless. But in silence, it settles. And in that stillness, the truth reveals itself. The Buddha's disciples often marveled at his ability to remain in deep, undisturbed silence for long periods. They realized that his wisdom did not come from speaking, but from deep inner observation. The less he spoke, the more he saw. The less he reacted, the more he understood. Can we practice this in our daily lives? Can we sit in silence without reaching for our phones, without feeling the need to say something? Can we allow conversations to breathe, to have space, to unfold naturally without forcing our own words into them? True noble silence is not just about staying quiet. It is about listening with presence. It is about experiencing reality as it is, without labels, without mental commentary. It is about meeting life with an open heart and an undistracted mind. If you have never tried this before, I invite you to take just 5 minutes today. 5 minutes where you do nothing but sit, breathe, and listen. Listen not just with your ears, but with your entire being. Notice the thoughts that arise, the discomfort that might come. Do not push them away. Do not judge them. Just watch. And in that watching, something incredible happens. The mind slows down, the heart softens, and clarity emerges. Silence is not emptiness. It is the fullness of presence. It is the space where wisdom grows, where compassion deepens, where true understanding takes root. And in this chaotic, noisy world, that silence is not just a practice, it is a refuge. Let us journey back, far back, to the time of the Buddha. Imagine a seeker, a man burdened by the great mysteries of life and death. He has wandered long and far, searching for a teacher who can give him the answers he craves. His heart is restless, his mind filled with questions that will not let him sleep. Finally, he arrives before the Buddha, the awakened one, whose presence alone seems to radiate peace. The seeker bows and asks, with all the urgency of a man lost in the darkness, what he believes to be the most important question of all. What happens after death? Silence. The Buddha does not speak. He does not answer. He simply remains still, serene, unmoved. The seeker waits, confused, perhaps even frustrated. Why would the Buddha, the most enlightened being in the world, refuse to answer such a vital question? But this silence is not emptiness. It is not ignorance. It is wisdom itself. The Buddha understood something profound, something we often forget. Some questions do not lead to liberation. They do not bring clarity. Instead, they deepen the very suffering we seek to escape. The seeker wanted certainty, a solid answer that would put his fears to rest. But the Buddha knew that chasing such certainty is like trying to catch the wind. The more we grasp, the more it slips through our fingers. Instead, the Buddha's silence was the answer, a teaching beyond words. What happens after death? The mind runs in circles, speculating, fearing, clinging to beliefs. But what about life right now? Are we present? Are we truly awake? Or are we lost in a fog of thoughts, worrying about a future that has not yet come? This is why noble silence is not just the absence of speech. It is the presence of deep understanding. It is the wisdom of knowing when words serve a purpose and when they only create more confusion. In our modern world, we are drowning in words, endless debates, opinions, arguments. We feel pressured to respond, to have an answer for everything. But what if we did the opposite? What if, instead of reacting, we simply observed? Instead of filling the silence, we embraced it. Buddha did not refuse to answer because he lacked knowledge. He remained silent because he understood the truth. Words, no matter how eloquent, can only point the way. But direct experience, deep, unshaken awareness, is beyond language. Silence is not avoidance, it is a doorway. When we practice noble silence, we learn to listen, not just to others, but to the stillness within ourselves. We learn that wisdom does not come from saying more, but from seeing more. When the mind is quiet, the truth can reveal itself, not as an idea, but as something living, something real. So the next time you find yourself caught in a storm of thoughts, in the endless noise of the world, remember this moment. Remember the Buddha's silence. Take a breath. Let go of the need to answer every question, to react to every word. Because sometimes the most profound truths are found not in speaking, but in listening. Noble silence is not emptiness. It is the space where wisdom grows. It is the peace we have been searching for all along. And in this chaotic, restless world, silence is not weakness. It is power. What exactly is noble silence? It is not simply the act of keeping your mouth shut. It is not a forced stillness, nor is it a passive retreat from the world. Noble silence is something far deeper. It is an internal state of quiet, a way of being where clarity and peace naturally arise. Think about this for a moment. How often do we speak just to fill the silence? How often do we react impulsively, letting emotions take over, instead of responding with mindfulness and wisdom? The Buddha once said, "A wise person speaks only when their words improve upon silence." But how often do our words do that? How often do they truly add value rather than create more noise, more misunderstanding, more suffering? Imagine if we practiced this wisdom in our own lives. Imagine the conflicts that could be avoided, the unnecessary stress that could dissolve simply by pausing, by allowing space before we speak, by allowing silence to be present without discomfort. But silence is not just a spiritual practice. Even science acknowledges its power. Studies have shown that constant chatter overstimulates the brain, making us restless, anxious, and unfocused. In contrast, intentional silence, moments of stillness, help improve concentration, reduce stress, and even enhance creativity. Why is this? Because silence creates space. Space to observe, space to understand, space to let go. But here's the real question. Are we truly afraid of silence? Or are we afraid of what we might discover within it? When we allow silence, we are left alone with ourselves, with our thoughts, our emotions, our fears. For many, this is uncomfortable. We seek distractions, fill the void with noise, always moving, always speaking, never pausing long enough to truly see what is beneath the surface. But the Buddha taught that true peace is not found in running away from ourselves. It is found in turning inward, in meeting ourselves with awareness, without judgment, without resistance. Noble silence is not about avoidance. It is not about suppressing thoughts or ignoring reality. It is about being fully present. It is about watching the mind, seeing its patterns, understanding its nature, and in doing so, finding freedom from its endless chatter. In a world that never stops talking, where opinions, arguments, and distractions flood our every moment, silence can feel unfamiliar, even intimidating. But in truth, it is the most natural state of all. The next time you feel the urge to fill the silence, to respond immediately, to speak without reflection, pause, take a breath, allow the silence to be there, because in that silence, you may find something far greater than words. You may find clarity, you may find peace, you may find yourself. And in the end, perhaps silence is not an absence after all. Perhaps it is the most profound presence of all. Silence alone is not enough. Like the inhale and the exhale, it must be balanced. It has a counterpart, mindful speech. The Buddha taught that words are powerful. They can heal, or they can harm. They can bring clarity, or they can create confusion. They can uplift, or they can destroy. Yet, look at the world around us today. In the age of social media, words are often used carelessly. Arguments spiral out of control. People speak without thought, react without reflection. Insults are thrown, opinions clash, and so much of what is said causes more suffering rather than less. The Buddha gave us a simple yet profound guideline for speaking. Before you say anything, ask yourself 3 things. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If the answer to any of these is no, then perhaps silence is the better path. How often do we speak just to be heard? Just to prove a point? Just to satisfy our own emotions in the moment? And how often do those words actually help? Think of a time you had an argument. Did your words bring understanding, or did they deepen the conflict? Did they bring resolution, or did they create more distance? Now, imagine something different. Imagine pausing before you speak, taking a breath, allowing a moment of space, a moment of silence. Imagine choosing words not to win, not to be right, but to understand, to bring peace rather than division, to heal rather than harm. This is the power of mindful speech. Words chosen with wisdom, with intention, with care. When speech is mindful, it carries weight. It does not drain energy. It restores balance. It does not cause harm. It creates harmony. It does not add to the noise. It cuts through it like a clear bell in the midst of chaos. And when speech is balanced with noble silence, something incredible happens. Communication is no longer about reacting. It becomes about understanding. Relationships deepen. Arguments dissolve before they begin. Inner peace replaces inner turmoil. So the next time you feel the urge to speak, ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And if not, let silence be your answer. Because in that silence, there is wisdom. In that silence, there is peace. And when you do speak, let your words be a reflection of that wisdom, a bridge rather than a barrier. This is the path the Buddha showed us, a path where silence and speech are not in conflict but in harmony, a path where words are used not as weapons, but as tools for compassion, a path that leads not just to better conversations, but to a better way of living. The power of silence in everyday life. In the teachings of the Buddha, silence is not emptiness. It is not the absence of something, but rather the presence of deep awareness. In the modern world, we are surrounded by constant noise, notifications, conversations, distractions. Yet, have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what lies beyond the noise? Imagine waking up in the morning, before you reach for your phone, before you check messages or think about your tasks. Just sit. Feel the breath entering and leaving your body. Notice the sensations in your hands, your feet, your chest. Let yourself be fully present. No need to analyze, no need to judge. Just be. Silence has a power that many of us have forgotten. In the Buddhist tradition, silence is a gateway to wisdom. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Silence is essential. We need silence just as much as we need air, just as much as plants need light." Throughout your day, create small islands of silence. Before answering a question, pause. Before reacting in frustration, breathe. When someone speaks to you, instead of planning your response, just listen, really listen. Feel the weight of their words, their emotions, their presence. Perhaps you can dedicate one meal each day to silent eating. No television, no music, no conversations, just you, your food, and the awareness of each bite. In Buddhist monasteries, eating in silence is a sacred practice. It is a way to cultivate gratitude and mindfulness, to truly taste and appreciate the nourishment before us. Maybe, before bed, you choose 1 hour of silence. No screens, no distractions, just the quiet embrace of the night. Sit with yourself, with your thoughts, without trying to change anything. Let them come and go like clouds drifting across the sky. Silence is not a void. It is not an absence of life. It is the space where clarity grows, where understanding deepens, where suffering dissolves. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that the wise one, even when alone, finds peace in silence. For it is in silence that we can hear the whispers of truth. So today, take a step towards silence, even just for 5 minutes, not as an escape, but as a return to yourself, to the present moment, to the profound wisdom that lies within. The wisdom of silence, seeing reality as it is. Imagine a vast, serene lake in the early morning. When the wind is strong, the surface ripples, distorting the reflection of the sky, the trees, the mountains. But when the wind settles, when the water becomes still, the reflection is clear, perfect, undisturbed. Our minds are just like this lake. When they are filled with noise, endless thoughts, worries, distractions, we cannot see clearly. We mistake our assumptions, fears, and desires for reality. But when the mind becomes still, when we allow silence to settle within us, we begin to see things as they truly are. Silence is a path to wisdom, a gateway to deep understanding. In the teachings of the Buddha, right mindfulness and right concentration lead to insight. But insight cannot arise in a restless mind. The Buddha often retreated into the forests, the mountains, and the quiet of the early morning to cultivate deep awareness. His disciples followed this practice, seeking solitude and silence to strengthen their understanding of the Dharma. Throughout history, many great beings have turned to silence to find clarity. In the Zen tradition, silence is not simply the absence of words, but the presence of deep listening. When a monk asks a master a question, sometimes the answer is only silence. Not because there is no answer, but because truth is beyond words. Consider your own life. How often do you sit in silence, without distractions? How often do you allow yourself to simply be, without reacting, without analyzing, without trying to fill the space with something external? If you want to think clearly, if you want to understand yourself, silence must become a part of your daily life. Try this. Before making a big decision, sit in stillness. Let your mind settle, like the surface of the lake. Let the noise fade. When clarity arises, it will not be forced. It will not be manufactured. It will come naturally, like the morning sun appearing over the horizon. Silence is not emptiness. It is not a void. It is the space where wisdom takes root. It is the place where true understanding begins. So today, take a moment, just one moment. Let go of the need to fill the silence. Let go of the need to always know, always do, always react. Instead, just be. Listen to the stillness. See what arises when the mind is at peace. The truth is already there, waiting for you to notice. The power of silence In a noisy world, we live in an age of endless noise. Everywhere we turn, there is something demanding our attention. Breaking news, social media updates, heated debates, opinions shouted from every direction. Misinformation spreads faster than truth. Outrage is rewarded with engagement. In this chaos, it is easy to get lost, to be pulled into the storm of reaction and judgment. But what if true strength lies not in speaking louder, but in knowing when to be silent? What if the greatest wisdom comes from observing rather than reacting? In the time of the Buddha, there were many who challenged him, who sought to provoke him, who tried to engage him in arguments. But he did not react with anger or haste. Instead, he remained still, present, aware. He understood that not every battle was worth fighting. Not every word needed a response. He chose his words carefully, speaking only when they carried truth and compassion. The Buddha once said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." This is the power of silence. It is not about withholding speech, but about cultivating presence. It is about choosing words that heal rather than harm, that bring understanding rather than division. Think about your own life. How often do you find yourself caught in arguments that lead nowhere? How often do you feel the urge to respond instantly without fully understanding? In a world that values speed, take a moment to slow down. In a world that rewards reaction, be the one who responds with wisdom. When you practice silence, you develop patience. You see things as they are, not as your emotions color them. You become less controlled by the noise around you and more in tune with the truth within. A mindful pause before speaking can change the course of a conversation. A moment of stillness before reacting can prevent regret. This is not weakness. This is power. The kind of power that does not seek to dominate, but to understand. The kind of power that brings peace instead of conflict. So today, practice the wisdom of silence. When the world shouts, listen. When others rush to speak, wait. Speak only when your words carry meaning. And in that space between noise and response, you will find something rare and precious: clarity, peace, and true inner strength. Embracing noble silence, a path to inner peace. So what have we discovered on this journey? That silence is not empty. It is full of wisdom. It is not a void, but a space where the mind can rest, where clarity can arise, where truth can be heard. That speech, when spoken with mindfulness, has the power to heal instead of harm. That our words, when chosen with care, can bring peace instead of conflict, understanding instead of division. And that true power is not in speaking more, but in speaking wisely. The one who speaks with intention, with awareness, with compassion, is far stronger than the one who speaks simply to be heard. This is the path to inner peace, not through arguing, not through reacting, not through filling every moment with noise, but through stillness, through presence, through the deep understanding that arises when we embrace silence. In the Buddhist tradition, this is called noble silence. It is not merely the absence of speech, but the cultivation of awareness. It is the silence that allows us to hear ourselves, to truly listen to others, to connect with the present moment without distraction. It is the silence that leads to wisdom. So, I leave you with this question. When was the last time you truly listened? Not just to words, but to the space between them. Not just to sound, but to the silence that holds it all. When was the last time you listened to yourself, to your thoughts, without judgment, to your breath, without distraction? When was the last time you truly listened to another person, without preparing a response, without forming an opinion, without waiting for your turn to speak? When was the last time you listened to the world around you? The rustling of the leaves, the stillness of the morning, the quiet presence of life itself. Maybe now is the time to embrace silence, not just as a practice, but as a way of life. Take a moment, breathe, be present, and in the stillness, discover the wisdom that has always been within you. If this message speaks to you, continue this journey with me. Reflect on your relationship with silence, apply these teachings, and explore the wisdom of mindfulness and Buddhism. Let's walk this path together.